everyone, and welcome to another episode of 70 Fantasy Behind the Scenes, the talk show where members of the development team delve into various topics about the creation of the brand new war game, 70 Fantasy. So today's episode is all about encounters, but before we get into that, I'd like to quickly just introduce our guest for today's show. Firstly, we have Carl Pereton, who I think at this stage doesn't require an introduction. But welcome along again. How are you this evening, Carl?
Oh, fine, Adele. You good?
Yeah, good. Thank you for coming along again. Secondly, we have another returning guest, Peter Wright. Thank you for joining. Were you eager to come back to the show?
Yeah, absolutely. I really like talking about 7TV, so it's a great pleasure to be back. Thanks, Eddie.
Brilliant, thanks for coming. And lastly, we have a new guest, but by now many would call an old dog with the 7TV world. So having worked on an intern on both Pulp and Fantasy, we have Connor Dwyer. Thanks for coming, Carl. Connor, how are you today?
Good, thanks, yeah. Good to be here.
Thank you for coming. You're very welcome. So, encounters. Carl, I'll come to you first because some people might see encounters and they might be new to this whole thing. I just want you to sort of tell us what they are. What are encounters?
Okay, so within 7TV, we have kind of 6 standard battles that we have. They are the escape, the raid, the battle, the rescue. There's this kind of really generic kind of setups and settings and kind of objectives for people within those, and they're great, and they allow you to play endless kind of types of game. But in Pulp, we introduced something called perils, and we've kind of brought those out again as encounters for 7TV Fantasy. And what encounters allow you to do is just add a huge amount more tone to each of those particular types of game. So you can play a battle, but you can bolt in the caverns and catacombs encounter, and they will allow you to have kind of exciting either environmental or kind of particular rewards that are triggered by certain things in the game, which may be particular actions that you take when you approach objective tokens, or when you get the MacGuffin. So each one is slightly different, and there are 25 of them in the new Encounters guide that we've put in the box set.
Yeah, so that was actually my next question. So, what this booklet that comes with the game? What is in that? Is that just all the different sort of pre-made game modes that are sort of ready to kind of load for the players?
We've got a very brief introduction, just telling you how you can bolt encounters into each of the different chapters. We've got a small section on some wandering monster rules, because a lot of the encounters themselves all give the opportunity for you to kind of draw random monsters into the game. So there's some brief rules around that, and then there are 25 encounters, which are themed largely around the 6 new genres that are in 7TV Fantasy. So the encounters that you've got in the game, there's a huge different range of them. There's Adventurers Camp, Dungeon Dangers, it's a folklore one for Enchanted Forest, Signs and Portents, which has got a bit of a kind of a Greek mythic fantasy feel to it, and Wizard's Tower that you can bolt into kind of different types of game. So yeah, they're all themed, as I say, and each one of those has got a lot of kind of trigger points in there, and some kind of quite random tables that you can that we can use as well to generate different effects for the game.
Yeah, okay, that's great. So Peter, what was your sort of involvement with the encounters then? Did you want to sort of create this encounter guide and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we did after we done Pulp, well, we did the perils for Pulp, and then we did a little expansion for Pulp called Menagerie of Terror, and that kind of really enriched games of 7TV Pulp. So we definitely wanted to do the same kind of thing again. So we asked each member of the development team to write at least one encounter, and some people did too, and then we swapped them over and revised and rejigged them and reconfigured them. What we were really trying to do, I think, was capture those kind of really sort of key cinematic moments that we'd seen in a lot of the films we'd watched or the novels we'd read, whatever it might be. So most of the encounters are informed by either our experiences of watching movies or fantasy TV shows, or from playing role-playing games, or from reading fantasy novels. So they're very much, a lot of them are kind of tributes to those memories that we kind of built up while we were working on 7TV Fantasy.
Yeah. So what inspired you, Connor? Or did you write an encounter and did you sort of base it off of anything?
Yeah. I remember working with Dan, who I'm certain has been on before on the show. And I remember we wrote a couple together, and the one that I remember most was Caverns and Catacombs. And that was, trying to capture the essence of the tabletop role-playing kind of niche, I suppose. Well, not niche, but I remember doing that, and that was good fun to kind of play with, especially after working on the perils towards the end of Pulp. It was good to have the opportunity to go again, essentially, and really flesh it out for fantasy.
Yeah. So for some of these encounters that you've wrote and that you looked at, did you find that some of them kind of all fit into, like, they kind of went into a certain genre, or could you plug each encounter across the 6 genres that we have in fantasy?
Yeah, the kind of, as there is in the Encounters Guide, it kind of gives a guideline on which genres they fit the best into, but it does also say that you can put them anywhere you want, really, and be as creative as you wish, because we kind of took a more like a lighter touch approach to them, where instead of restricting the players with set genres, it was more just a guideline, and if it goes chaotic, that's part of the fun.
Yeah, for sure. So, Carl, I might put you on the spot a little bit. Have you got like an example of an encounter to hand, or off the top of your head? That is within the booklet.
Okay, so I'm going to go with Behind the Walls in there. And there's a little description for each one. A town or city brings safety from the wilderness, but civilization also brings its own challenges. So with this one, we are trying to do that great kind of trope and pastiche, all of your kind of role-playing experiences when you wander into that small, hamlet or village or city for the first time and go around. So this one is an example where it's triggered by a drawing of the trilogy cards. Every third trilogy card that you draw, you then roll 2d6, and you consult the table which is on the page of the book. And some random things are mistaken identity. You're wrongfully arrested. Your opponent may remove 1 extra of no more than 2 ratings from play unless you pay 2 plot points. There's another one in there, Speaker's Corner, Weapons Practice, Tourney. Each one of them does a slightly different effect, but it's just really harks back to those kind of, the random rumours table that you used to get whenever you'd go into a village or something in there. So we've tried to give different rewards and different outcomes. There's barter and haggle. You visit the marketplace, you may discard an artifact card to draw a new one. So all it's doing is playing on the existing mechanics and accessories that we've got, just to get a little bit more randomosity and a kind of excitement and tone in there. We're just trying to pastiche and all of those favourite tropes. That's kind of what 7TV does. So we try to extend it down to the gameplay as well as much as we can.
Yeah.
So that's Behind the Wall. There you go.
Okay. I mean, this sounds like really fun to design. So, Peter, what are the sort of the challenges when it comes to sort of trying to think and design an encounter? Does it give you a lot of like creative freedom as well, do you find?
Yeah, it does give you a lot of creative freedom, but I think the way I've usually approached it is, what's the trigger? I mean, Carl was talking about, using particular trilogy cards to trigger certain events in an encounter. We also used the collecting of objective tokens. A double move action, for example, might trigger an encounter. or proximity to certain pieces of terrain. So there's quite a lot of creativity you can do that around triggers. And then once you've got your triggers, you can then decide, okay, what type of encounters are we going to have, and how many encounters are we going to have? Are they going to be a 1d6? Are they going to be 2d6? And as soon as you step up to the 2d6, then you've got to consider, the frequency. So you don't have something really difficult for the players occurring, really quite often. They're at either end of the bell curve, really. So yeah, there is a lot of opportunities there for being creative. And once you start taking inspiration from certain sources, you then have to start really thinking creatively about how can you express those in cinematic terms. So you and I worked on one, if you remember, with burial mounds.
Oh yeah.
So we took inspiration from a certain barbarian adventure movie, and then we thought about all of the encounters that occur in and around burial mounds, and then added to that a whole array of new things to deal with the undead and hauntings and relics and things like that. So it is a way of taking inspiration and then letting your imagination run riot, really, with that particular cinematic scene or that scene from a particular book, as we did with something like Deathly Marshes. We took inspiration there and then thought, okay, how deathly can we make these marshes, particularly? So that was quite a lot of fun as well.
Yeah, I really enjoyed making the burial mounds. So when sort of like, what was your sort of experience, Connor, with designing? Did you find the same as Peter in terms of like, because when I remember, it was kind of like after we designed the game, and then it was a case of just fitting it was almost like fitting the puzzles, and you found that there was answers there within the game when you have an idea of an encounter. Did you find it the same as that?
Yeah, definitely. I remember, in fact, that the kind of issue that we had with slightly off, but the issue which we had with balancing the idea of having a dragon in as a model that a player could actually play with, and it effectively ended up being perfect for the Dragonfire kind of encounter and multiple of the dragon themed sort of encounters that we've got in the encounter guide instead. And I remember that felt like quite a satisfying way to still have the idea of the dragon sweeping across your battlefield and causing carnage without off balancing the entire feeling of the game. So
yeah, cause trying to cast a dragon, we thought it'd have to be like ridiculous, and so it was a really great way to sort of get around that because of the encounters. We on the last episode we talked about sort of play testing, and Carl, what was your sort of? Did you set them any encounters during the sort of play testing? Was there any encounters that needed that kind of thorough play testing?
I think we divided them up amongst the playtesters, but actually I think there were just a couple of places where we needed to clarify just where some of the trigger points were happening a little more. But I don't think a lot of the kind of the content of those random outcomes changed at all. Really, they were all pretty solid. It was just making sure that it was clear what happens when. Really, because they're all different, so there's a good variety of things in there. But no, they were pretty solid out of playtesting from memory serves.
Yeah, bro. So what I'll go around each of you with this question, sort of in turn, just to get sort of people excited for the encounters, because there's something that I'm sort of really looking forward to, and probably the first thing I'll turn to is like, how what can I play? There's too many things. I need something to kind of hone me in. So I'll probably look at those as I start sort of opening the game. So what is your favourite encounter? I'll go with you, Carl, first.
I'm probably going to go with Temple of Essential Evil, because it's got both a wandering monster kind of deck in it where you can summon up demons and guardian beasts and malign priests out of it. And on top of that, it's got a 2d6 kind of effects table where there's strange emanations, and you can speak in tongues, and there's a cloister bell, and there's all manner of weird stuff kind of going on. So I'd probably look to play that hard back to some favourite kind of RPG encounters as well, which is laid quite heavily in this box set.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's right up your street then for that one. Peter, what's your favourite encounter? And you can't say burial mounds because that's the one we did.
I am fond of burial mounds, but I think Storms of Chaos is my next favourite, or my equal favourite, really. And that makes quite inventive use of our old favourite, the Blast 5-inch template to alter the terrain. So we've got things like Red Rain, where blood fills the air and land runs crimson. All models touched by the template must pass a spirit statistic test or receive the distracted status. Or Runic Fissures, where the landscape opens up and you have to roll an extra 1d6 if you're a magic user in your cast when they try to perform a spell. We've got Narcotic Meadows, Snapping Fields, where the ground actually tries to eat your models. Shrieking Crystals, Seething Flesh. I'm not quite sure how or where a lot of these came from, but they were quite a lot of fun. I think my favourite was Howling Pustules, which has got to be, every teenager's nightmare.
There's a lot of Moorcock going on in there, I think.
There might be a tad of Moorcock, yeah, definitely. But yeah, I think that's definitely my favourite, just because it's a bit wackier than some of the other encounters.
Yeah, for sure. And Connor, what was your favourite encounter, or the one that you're most looking forward to?
So I particularly like the tavern crawl, and I think it's because it plays into the much more kind of atmospheric feeling that you can get from 7TV, especially when you've got the kind of great terrain going with it, and just the sort of, it's quite a hands-off approach to an encounter, so it doesn't necessarily affect the core of the game too much, but it's got the fun additions such as hearing the bard kind of playing music and gambling and having a bard brawl and getting a hot pie is one of the things here as well. I think the atmosphere that you get from it is really what I enjoy, and it's kind of quite contrasting to the two that Carl and Peter have picked, and I think that's what makes it great. It makes the encounter guide just so unique and fun.
Yeah, so we can all enjoy the different elements. Sorry, go on, go.
I was going to say, I need to make mention of one in there, which I think I'm going to say, is it Raiders? Is that what? Yes, it is. Which is one of the very first things that you ever mentioned in the first meeting when we were having a chat, Eddie.
Okay.
When you were talking about Conan, the opening scenes of Conan. When we were talking about, what the things you remember from film, where the horses come over the hill and the village gets set on fire and attacked. Well, Raiders kind of ended up in there from that very initial conversation.
Well, I think I watched, because I watched Conan and then I watched Beastmaster, and they both pretty much have the same intro where they get raided. They somehow survive, and then but yeah, the raids are like a big thing, and
I just remember those initial conversations about, well, how can we reflect that in a profile or something else? And it kind of in the back of my head, I'm thinking, yeah, I know where that can end up. And it's it was one of the very first things you said.
That's brilliant. Well, there was like a magical themed encounter as well, but I can't quite remember which one it was. But there was loads of it was an encounter where loads of sort of like spells or sort of displacement things are used. But I can't remember which one it's called. I don't know if anyone knows which one I'm trying to think of.
Storms of Chaos does a little bit of that. There's a Wizard's Tower one where
that's it.
Kind of all manner of a kind of strange artifacts and things in various different rooms. Halls of the Dead and the Ritual have got kind of undead and other creatures being kind of summoned up. So there's a good mix in there. Enchanted Forest, I think, might have a few kind of magical twists to it as well.
Yeah, I'm sure people are going to sort of really enjoy these encounters and sort of see how they can sort of twist the game that they know and love, and that's what I love about these encounters. They're going to be so much fun. Well, I think that's probably about it for today's episode. We've discussed. I don't want to kind of drag things on too much. Obviously, we're quite sort of pressed for time on these little short format, sort of shows. But if people are interested in maybe like a longer form, just let us know in the comments, and we can sort of see what we can do, because obviously people are really enjoying these. But yeah, that's about it for today. Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Connor, for joining today. It's been excellent sort of catching up and chatting about encounters. Yeah. So yeah, thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you all in the next episode. Bye for now.
Thanks, Eddie.
Cheers, Eddie.
Yes.